I have a couple of questions, and I think one of them or a couple of them you can answer together. And those are, what is the vortex? How can I get in it? And what do you mean when you use the word contrast?
The vortex is the vibrational reality that has come to be because of your living of life. When you acknowledge that you don't like this, if someone's rude to you, you want them to be nicer. If you're rude, you want to be nicer. If you don't have enough money, you want more money. So through the living of life, you have come to personal awarenesses of things that you desire or things that you prefer, and you have launched those thoughts. We've been calling them rockets of desire, and they have been culminating in a vibrational reality. It's hard for people to accept it because it's not yet tangible. You can't see it or hear it or smell it or taste it or touch it. You can feel it if you get in tune with it. So that's what the vortex is. For a while we were saying, get into the vortex, get into the vortex, get into the vortex, because we knew that if you'd let go of resistance or worry about things that weren't working out, that then you would automatically be there where you could begin to realize what's really in there. These days we are saying it differently. We are saying that the vortex exists, and that when you get into the receptive mode, which simply means get yourself somehow feeling good emotionally, that then what is in the vortex will begin to be realized by you. It's being revealed to you constantly, but you can't hear it if you're on a different vibrational wavelength. In the same way that if you've got your radio dial set on 97.6, you can't hear what's being broadcast on 101 FM. The frequencies have to match up. So the receptive mode gives you conscious access to what's in the vortex. So some would say, oh, then it's a fictional place. And we say, it's fictional if you need to see it before you believe it. But it's a place that you can feel. It is a reality. What we mean by contrast is variety that helps you choose. Some of it more preferred, some of it less preferred. But it is the variety that helps you, a significant, important, deliberate creator, to choose. Without it, you can't choose. It's like if you went to the buffet, you're hungry and you wanted to eat, and there was only one thing to eat. That's not contrast, that's tragedy. Clear enough?
Mm-hmm.
Something else?
Yes. Could you share with us a rampage of appreciation, please?
We will before the day is out.
Okay.
And we have been here and there, but yeah, we'll get to that for sure.
Perfect.
Really good.
Thank you.
Enough?
Mm-hmm.
So I have 3 questions.
He wants it out of your face.
Okay. The 3 questions is, how do you overcome social anxiety? How do you master your mind? And how do you live with the feeling of the wish fulfilled?
Practice, practice, practice. It helps to understand the laws as we've been talking about them today. But it's sort of like if a train's going 80 miles an hour that way and you want it to go 80 miles an hour that way, you don't want it to happen suddenly. It would be hard on what's on or in the train. So it's just a matter of giving less attention to what you don't want until it slows down, and more attention to what you do want until it speeds up. So ask your 3 questions again.
How do you master your mind?
By acknowledging that you have the ability to think the thoughts that you mean to think. By realizing that you don't have to be a reactor, that you can be a thinker. But by accepting that law of attraction abounds, and that if there is already some momentum going, it's not wrong that the momentum keeps going that way. The first step in mastery of your own mind is not being mad at yourself because you don't have mastery of your own mind. It's relaxing and giving yourself a break and acknowledging that it is possible. And then most of all, noting when. Pay attention to the correlation between good feeling thoughts that you've thought and good feeling results that you've found. Esther had an experience of mastery fairly recently. A person asked her for a job. and she was in a state of overwhelmment when he asked her. She was leaving one of her houses, and there were many things that needed to be tended to, and she knew that she couldn't tend to them from a distance. And so he presented himself, and she felt like she was in a receptive mode because it seemed like a good idea to her. But her receptive mode was one of overwhelmment, too much to do. And so she hired him, and he was not an effective person in that job, far from it. Where later, when she was feeling such appreciation in the same place, feeling such appreciation about what was going on, another person presented himself to her, and she thought it was the best idea she had ever heard. Well, she thought the other was a pretty good idea too, but this felt like a really good idea. And because she was in a good feeling place, as that played out, it's been flawless and wonderful and productive and effective. So she accomplished mastery, you might say, after the fact, in this way. She remembered how she felt when she hired that guy, and she saw the results that she got from that hiring. And then she remembered how she felt when she got that guy, and she saw the results of that hiring. See what we're getting at? Yes. So mastery is really just paying attention to how you feel and paying attention to what comes as a result of how you've been feeling. But if you're not deliberate about it, if you're just thinking about this and knowing the rules of the game, playing them deliberately and watching for the results. Thank you for the question, because it's really an important answer.
I mean, because when I have social anxiety, because I don't know what triggers it, I look inside my mind, be like, what is it? And I look into my thoughts, there's no thoughts of fear.
Describe it a little bit. Are you saying social?
Social, yeah.
Social.
Like sometimes it's talking to a stranger, picking up the phone, making a sale, being in a room full of people I don't know.
And yet here you're doing all right. You're not having any social anxiety now.
I mean, I have it, just go with it. One time someone told me, feel the fear and do it anyway, because whatever you want is behind that fear.
Well, we're not encouraging you to feel the fear and push through it, although sometimes you're in a situation where you have no choice. You can't just evaporate because you're having fear. I'm going to cease to exist because I feel fear. That's not what we're encouraging either. You have to continue to be. But here is what is at the core of this. And as you hear this, it's going to go a long way in helping you to release it. You've learned through the living of life that you cannot control what others do or how they think or how they feel. And so if it is important to you that they approve of you, since you can't control their approval, then you feel anxiety. You have to get into this unconditional place where what they think is not your criteria for the way you control your life. The criteria for the way you control your life is how you feel in the receptive mode. Oh, that was really good. Did you hear that? You see? Because frankly, you can't trust others because they don't care enough about you in most cases. It's not their job anyway to feel about you the way you need them to feel about you in order for you to feel good. So it's really a wonderful thing to acknowledge. Esther said to someone not that long ago, this is the thing that I've learned more in the last year than maybe all other things put together. No matter how much I try to explain myself to somebody else, they're not going to get me. They just can't get me. They haven't had enough exposure to the things that I've had exposure to in order to understand why I am who I am. So they're not going to get me. And so it's got to stop mattering to me that they get me, because they're not going to get me. Got to resign. Got to give it up.
Well, like you were saying, like mastery over that you ask something, it's there, but the only way you can have it is by being receptive, going to that frequency. And the only way I have overcome it or in the process of it is pretty much asking myself, well, how does it feel like to be charismatic? How does it feel like to be confident or courageous?
Perfect.
And I assume the feeling.
Good plan.
But I think it's like mastering that too.
Yeah.
Not assuming, but also, I mean, when it becomes a habit where you just do it naturally.
Well, the more you do it, a thought that you think often becomes a belief. And a belief is a momentum of your point of attraction. It's what we were talking about earlier about it's easier to have those kinds of thoughts first thing in the day when there's less momentum going on. And so just wake up, and very good advice that you're giving to yourself and others, focus upon your positive aspects, your own positive aspects, and the positive aspects of anyone or anything.
Because mostly when I ask something, I have to realize that it's not something I sit down and do. It's something that as I'm doing, I have to become the things that I want. so they can come to me. Because one thing I realized that everything that I want wants me, because it already exists in substance.
Well, law of attraction says that must be true because you meet like this. So for a while we were talking about the different emotions, and we were talking about a sort of like flying discs. There's the ornery disc, and there's the depressed disc, and there's the angry disc, and there's the blameful disc, and then there's the revengeful disc, because revenge has more feeling of control in it than vulnerability. And then there's the overwhelmed disc, and then there's the happier disc, and happier and happier and happier. And so if you're ornery and you're meeting up with all these ornery people, well, you're just all on the same disc. You weren't flying high and they jumped on your disc and made you ornery. You've got to take responsibility for how you feel. And it's easier to do that, as we've said so many times today, by getting out ahead of it, by wanting to feel good more than anything else. Really good. Really good time for a segment of refreshment.